Hey everyone, you're home on Tools with James, and today I'm going to show you how to build a lean-to patio for your house. We're going to do it for under $1,000 and I reckon we can do it in 3 days. So take that long weekend, let's jump in, build a lean-to patio. Let's go. Okay, so the patio I'm going to build today, it's going to be a 3 metre by 3 metre lean-to, and it's going to come off the back of the house covering the back door here. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to build this backing plate for the patio. So this is the beam that is going to be fastened above our doorway to the actual house, and this is going to hold the patio lean-to the house. Now this is a piece of structural treated pine. It is 140 by 45, so 6 by 2 if you're from the States. That's the material we're going to use. Now what we're going to do here is I'm going to actually check out and rebate where I'm going to do my rafters coming across. I'm going to give you a closer look at how I do that. There is a couple of ways we can do this. So my preferred method is to do it with a router, because I've got a router. If you don't have a router, you can totally do it with a circular saw or a table saw, or you can even go old school and you can do it with a hammer and chisel if you choose. I'm going to give you a bit of a look at a couple of ways to do it across the course of the video, because we've got a few of these checkouts to do. But for this first one, I'm going to focus on using the router and showing you how I get nice clean cuts with that. So the rebates will act as supports for the rafters, and it will remove the need to put in those joist hangers that you see, those rafter hangers, and I'll give you a bit of a look. I've got a pergola here that has been built with them. I don't want to do that. I want to make this really clean and neat, and hide as many bolts and hardware as we can, and just have that nice wood look. So that's what we're going for on this one. The checkouts will also ensure that the structure is nice and straight and give it some rigidity, and I'll stop any sort of sideways movement. So I'll go through, we'll put these checks in, I'll give you a bit of a look at what we're doing there, and then we'll move on to the next stage. So let's go and get these checks done. Okay, so a closer look at what I'm doing here. So what I'm going to do for my rafters that go across, you don't want them to be any more than about 1 metre apart. All right, you want to hug it in. 800, I think, is sort of the sweet spot. In this case, I've got a 3 metre beam here. I'm going to use 5 rafters coming across. All right, so all I've done is I've taken a measurement from the end right to the centre at 1.5 metres. All right, and then I've halved that number to give me 750. Now these are centres, right? So this is going to be the centre of the rafters. It's not the ends, this is the centres. So effectively, we're going to be left with around a 710, 720 mark in between each one, which I think is the sweet spot. And we're going to do these checkouts. Now, the way that we do these, and I've already buzzed one out with a router so you can get a bit of a look. You can see that we're checked out. Now, I've got a bit of sample stock here. So this is just a bit of framing timber, but it's the same diameter as the wood that I'm working with. And the reason we're going to do these checks is because they'll butt in nice, like so, and there'll be no sideways movement in that. So really good way to do it. So we've checked out the end one. We're going to check out 1, 2, 3, 4 more. And we're going to do it with a router. So I'll show you how I do this with the router. The end ones are a little tricky with the router, just calling out now. You might want to do those with a table saw. But as I said, I'm going to show you the table saw method as we progress further on a few more checkouts that we need to do. So I'll show you the router method first. Okay, so what we're doing here is we've got our center line of one of the checkouts we need to make. I'm taking my piece of timber, and remember that was the center line. So I'm going to sit that over the middle, like so. And I have continued my line along here so I can get my center, and I'm going to use a speed square. I'm just going to drive that along too to make sure that it's nice and square and plumb, and then just trace the edges with a grey lead. Alright, so we're good. So we know we need to check out this area here. Now we're going to check it out 10 mil deep, and the way we do that is we're going to take, I've got a rafter square here and I've got the speed square. We're going to clamp those and set them up, and we're going to make our own little sort of router guide, and then we're just going to route this out back and forward, slow passes until we get that 10 mil deep, and it should be absolutely plumb and beautiful. So just one last thing before we do hook in. You can see here I've clamped my speed square, I've clamped my router square, so it's giving me an edge to run my router along to. Now, how did I know how far to put those apart? All I did was I kept my lines running over the edge, and I've taken my router. You can see that line that I've got there. I've taken my router and I've just hung him off the edge here and against my square, and you'll see, a bit hard to see, but you'll see there that edge is in line with where I need to rebate out. So those are my two guides. I'm right to route it out now. Low passes on this, don't try and knock it out all in one chunk.
I'll probably make 4 passes to get my 10mm deep.
So look at our checkout, just beautiful, right? Really nice with the router, you get a great finish. And then as you can see, that locks in there absolutely beautifully.
So I mentioned that doing the end ones with the router was a bit more tricky, and this is because you don't have material either side for the router to balance on. So my recommendation if you're using a router on the end ones is bring this right up to the edge so that when you are using your router, you can get it down to depth at the edge first, and then work your way back across. That way you'll find that the router won't tip as badly this way, and you end up, going into too deep into the material and not getting a nice checkout. So just a quick tip. Okay, so you can see nice clean rebates all the way along. So beautiful, we've got that done. Now one more thing we need to do to this is we're going to flip it over. Now you get bonus points for this, you don't necessarily have to do it, but I'm going to use this nail brace board, and this is going to act as strapping, and it's going to basically go onto the back of this, which this will be against the wall, and then bend on over and strap onto the top of our rafter. So that's the idea, right? Now you don't have to, but I'm going to. Just on the back here you can just nail that away and put it in place, and it'll pull in nice and tight to the wall. But I'm actually going to check it out and rebate as well, and look, it's honestly probably 1 or 2 mil. All right, so I'm just going to check that out in the back just so it's nice and flush, but that's just an optional extra. So I'm going to go and do that, and then I'm going to fasten this off just with some nails, and then we'll look at the next piece. So for these, exact same principle as we used for the rebates on the other side. I've got my my speed squares set up, and then I'll just put in my bracing strap, and then I can just check that off, and then I can just make my little rebate exactly like we did the other side, and it'll sit all nice and flush.
Okay, so I'm going to nail these straps on now. Now what I'm using here are some galvanised clouts. These are 30 mils by 2.8s, and I want to use a generous amount of these, and the reason you want to use clouts is because they've got that nice round head and they won't pull through your brace. So we're just going to sit these in like so. We're going to take our hammer, we're going to drive them home. So we're going to do that for each of the 5. Nail them nice and flat, and then we're done with this. We're done with this backing board, and we're going to paint it before we put it up.
So we've got our straps all in place now. You can see them hanging over the back, so they'll fold over onto the top, of our rafter. One thing I mentioned before we do get this in paint, and anything you can do with it at this stage down at working level, the more you can do now, the better. You don't want to be doing this stuff up above your head with it in place. So we're going to get this done now. I've marked out in the center of the boards everywhere I'm going to put a bolt. Now I'm essentially going to put a bolt beside each one of our rafters. Okay, and I'm going to countersink the head because I want this to be really neat. You don't have to do this as an optional extra also, but I'm going to countersink the heads, and I'm going to do that with what's called a Forstner bit. You could use a spade bit as well. This just gives you a cleaner finish. And I think I'm using a 28mm one here, and what that'll do is allow me to run my M10 bolt through, and I'll still be able to get a socket on the end of it to tighten it. So I'm going to run through, drill our Forstner bit holes here, countersunk. And then I'm going to take my 10mm drill bit, I'm going to drill straight through, some M10 bolt will go through, and then this one's ready for paint. Okay, so there's our backing board complete for attaching the lean-to to the house. It's ready for paint, all right? So don't run away with it just yet. We're going to now prep the end accepting board. So this is the one that goes from the house, and this is be the one that the rafters go across to. That'll be on your posts at the other end. All right. Now you might notice that this board here is a little thicker. So this is a 190 by 45 board, or an 8 by 2, and we're going to use this one to the rafters to accept into. Now the reason we've gone 50 mil bigger here is that the rafters coming in, we're going to do the same that we did here. We're going to check them out. We're going to leave some media at the bottom for the rafters to go and sit onto. All right. And the reason we're not running off with this just yet is we're just going to lay this one on top of this one, and we're going to mark off so we know exactly where our lines are, so that when we put it up nice and square, each checkout is going to accept to one another with a rafter. So I'm going to match this one up to that one. I'm going to do all my rebates. I'm doing this with a router as well. Make life easy for me. I did promise I'll show you the saw technique. I'm going to do that with some other checkouts that we're going to do, so you'll see that. But I'm going to prep this board, and we'll meet back before I paint these, just to talk about how I've done what I've done and what it looks like. So here's our end board. This is the board that's going to accept the rafters. You can see I've marked it out as per the board that we've got going hard against the house. All right, so now that's that measurement. Now that's going to be 140, right? Now this one's a little bit more critical because I'm going to run a 5-degree fall, and don't worry, I'll cover that off in some further detail when we get up to that stage. But I want a 5-degree fall on my roof, and because of that, the rafters are going to be cut at 5 degrees. Now what that will do is this length here will no longer be 140. All right, so I've taken one of my rafters and I've cut it there at 5 degrees. You can see on my table saw that I've got it cut at 5 degrees. And now if I take a ruler onto that, excuse me while I just pop that on there. All right, so it's nice and flush at the end. You can see now that is, if it focuses, that is 142 mil. So we want to be really close with this one, because what we don't want is that when we get to to putting the rafters in, we don't want them protruding above the top, because then we're going to have this little gap and it's going to look a bit dicky, right? So we want it to be nice and flush with the top run here. So to do that, I need to add 2 mils. This needs to be 142 mil. So that's just a bit of a tip there. So there's one checked out, ready to go, and as you can see, nice snug fit, and it'll accept that rafter really nicely. Just with the router, probably just the one thing is in the corner here, you will just have to get your chisel in there. I can't route, perfect 90 degree without having a little round a bit over, so just clean it up with the chisel and you should be right. I've got 4 more to do and then we'll come back and have a look. So here we go, we're going to paint our 2 beams, but I just wanted to show you, see how these line up now perfectly? They're the ones that are going to click into each other with a rafter in between, so it'll just go together like a big Lego sort of set, and that's what we want. We want to do all the hard work down on the ground now, and it might be a little bit time consuming, but I assure you it will pay off. So my only tip when painting these, do not get paint in any of our connecting joints. If you do that, you're going to have a hell of a time trying to press your rafters in when they're up over your head and you're trying to press them in. So let's just keep paint out of there, paint everywhere else, and you should be good to go. So I'm going to paint these and I'll meet you back. Alright, so now we're working on the rafters that we're going to put on our patio. So I've already cut a few to size here, and I'll show you. What we've got here is I've cut that at 5 degrees, and we've cut the other end at 5 degrees. Now it's important when you do cut these that the angle's got to go back towards this way for both of them, alright? If you get the angles wrong, it's going to go all horribly wrong when you go to put it on the roof. So just making sure that our angles both pointing in the same direction, so we get that nice 5 degree fall. Now why 5 degrees? What's the first? For one, it's an easy measurement on the miter saw, so I'm at 5 degrees there, but it's a good fall for a lean-to. Any more pitch than that, it starts to look a bit silly. Any less pitch than that, and you're probably going to get things standing on your roof, which you don't want. But you can do more pitch depending on what's going on with your house and the shape of the roof. But I find that 5 degrees is a pretty good number, so that's what we're going to do. So set the saw 5 degrees, dock your edges, and what I want to do here is marry them all up. So I've got one more that's in paint outside, and then I'll cut this last one, then I'll have 5. I'm actually going to clamp them all together, make sure that they're all perfectly the same length. And I'm going to show you a little trick on how we're going to check them out to run our top hats or our cross braces across. So do this last one cut, we'll meet back and I'll show you what I'm going to do there.
Well, okay, we've got all our rafters cut to size. We've got our 5-degree angles cut on both ends, and I have labelled the far end just with a H, and that's just going to signify house, so I know what end I'm working from. Now, why have I clamped these together? So I've clamped these together because what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to put a rebate. I'm going to check out where our cross bracing is going to go. Now, you could quite easily just put these on top, and that's totally fine. You could do that. But the reason I want to check that out and drop these into the rafters is because I want to get some more height out of my roof. I've got a pretty low roof at the doorway there, and I want to get a ceiling fan in. So this is going to give me that extra 45 mil of height with my roof. Plus, it's going to look $1 million. It's going to look really, really good. Now, just as you saw me earlier checking out the house plate and the rafter receiving board at the other end, you saw me checking those out with a router. I'm going to show you now how to do it with a circular saw. So you could do all those cuts with your circular saw as well. I'm going to cut these ones with a circular saw. All right. So what I've done here is I've marked in 200 from the ends. Now the one at the house, you want to make sure you are marking it in far enough, because I'm going to slide this right up underneath the gutter. I want to make sure that where it is going up underneath the gutter, I'm going up close enough that I'm not going to hit the bottom of the gutter, if that makes sense. It'll probably make a bit more sense when I put it up on the roof. So I've slid that down 200 from this end as well. That just gives me a good bit of space from my big backing board that I've got there. And then I've just evenly spaced them, and I'm using 90 by 45 or 2 by 4s, 5 of them going across, and that'll give us plenty to screw our colorbond tin into. I'm going to use a speed square for this. I'm going to use the circular saw with a speed square. I'm going to mark out exactly the same method as before. Mark out my 90 by 45 on top of the timber. I'm going to cut to that. And all you've got to do with your circular saw is make sure that you set the blade. I've got the big boy saw out here today because I want some dust extraction. I'm inside. But just set your blade to the depth of your 90 by 45s, and that way you're going to get that perfect cut, and these should just drop in beautiful, and then we're painting. So let's go, let's make some cuts and get dusty. Okay, so we've done our passes with a circular saw, and you can see here we're just left with a bunch of this, little bits of timber in there from where we've made the cuts, and they sort of come out like little dominoes. All you do here is just take your hammer and just bash them over. It's quite satisfying actually. Bash them over and pull them all out. And once they're all out, all you want to do to clean them up is just to run your chisel over them, get it nice and smooth, and it'll be good to go. It'll accept your crossbeam.
Alright, so it's the next day now, and as you can see, we've got all our rafters prepped, we've got our backing board prepped, we've got the wall board prepped, we've got the whole lot done. So we're good to go and move on to the posts, but just wanted to call out, checking out the rafters like this. Now this is only a very small lean-to patio, right? So it's a 3 metre by 3 metre. I wouldn't do this where you're going to enclose the roof space. So in my case, this is going to be a free open air roof, being an outdoor patio. Because you'd want to put them on top, and this allows a little bit of ventilation to get between your roof panel and your rafter. And the other thing would be, if you're doing big spans, you do lose a bit of structural integrity by essentially taking out 45 or near 2 inches out of your beam. Now I know I'm filling it again with another 90 by 45, so it's going to be nice and rigid, but just wanted to call that out, that if you were looking at this method for a small roof like mine, this is overkill still anyway. It will be perfectly fine, but if you are doing big spans, probably just check with either an engineer or have a look at your building specs before you go ahead and do that. Cool.
Okay, so if you made it this far, you'll be nice and dusty, and we're on to the construction phase. And if you have got a moment, please consider subscribing to the channel if you're liking what you see. Smash a like, and always love a comment down there as well. You'll see behind me here, I've put up our backing plate to the house. Now, always best if you can get a buddy to help you with this one, but I did this one-man solo. I'm pretty lucky here. I'm doing it in the doorway. So what I've done here is I've clamped a long straight edge, or spirit level if you like, up into the door frame at the height that I want to put my, my backing board on with, and then basically made sure it was level, sat her on top, and then you're ready to go. Now, The other thing that I did just to hold it in place so that I could put nice straight drill holes through and put my, my coach bolts in this instance through, is just behind where we're going to put in our rafters. I've just smacked some framing nails in, because I know that the house is made out of timber, and that'll go in nice and neat. So I've done that just to hold it in place. And then what I'm doing for this job is I'm hole drilling through the countersunk holes we've already made, and I'm putting in M10 galvanized coach bolts with a washer. You always want to use a washer for this because it helps disperse the load evenly and gives you better clamping force for the backboard to the house. Now, I'm using coach bolts for this being timber, but if you can get a through and through on this, so if you can get right back through the other side, unfortunately in this case I can't, I would always recommend using a bolt, and I'd start at an M10 for this type of job, M12 probably even better. I just had these lying around. Washers both ends, nuts, spring washers, galvanized, tighten them up. So you want to do a through and through if you can, always the best. If you're going into brick, use an anchor screw. So these are bolts essentially, but they're the same. You can get them M10, M12, M14, whatever you like. And these, you pilot these as well with your masonry bit, and these will go straight into your brick wall. You want these to go in pretty deep, all right? So if you were on that up against a brick wall, you would just do the exact same process I'm doing here, but just your anchoring hardware would be a little bit different. I'm putting these in with a rattle gun. I just find it's easy. It'll buzz them in nice and quick. I've got this nice and level ready to go. I've also had the electrician come through at this point and just rough in where I'm going to have my ceiling fan and my lights and my security camera to run through. So that's all done. You might want to get that out of the way while you've got pretty easy access now. So I'm going to finish putting up this, and then we're going to meet back and we're going to look at what we need to do to get these posts in the ground. Let's go.
Okay, so moving right along to the posts that we're going to use. Now, the posts that I'm using here are cypress pine, so this is treated structural cypress pine, and they're 100mm by 100mm or 4x4s. I really like cypress pine, and I've got them in rough sawn. I just like the look of them. They look really good. I've got them over there on my bridge, since I've got an Ambo going by. I've got them there on my bridge. I've had that bridge there for like 13 years or something, and they've held up really, really well. And I want these to match because it's essentially going to tie in a bit with that. We're going to use the same principle that we used to check out our rafters with. I've clamped the two of them together, and all I've done is docked the top and got them nice and even, because these were rough sawn and they weren't cut to square. So we've cut them to square. We're going to put on our back beam. Now this back beam is going to get accepted into these posts. So we're going to check out the top of these posts. So this beam essentially gets sunk into these posts at the end and gives us some really good structural integrity. So I'm just going to basically mark this off, use the same technique that I've used with the circular saw. We're going to do a heap of buzz cuts through here, check it all out, clean it up so this sinks in, and then we're going to start getting this thing 3D. We'll start standing it up, and that's when you'll really see some progress. Well, let's go. This has got to be one of the most satisfying parts of the job. Making the dominoes. Now, I've seen quite a few videos of people doing these cuts. They've pre-put the posts into the ground, and they're standing up a ladder with a circular saw doing these cuts vertically. It's okay, I suppose. Look, they get the job done, but this is way safer, way easier, and would be my suggestion. We're essentially going to assemble this with the beam in place. We'll get it all square on the ground, build it like a house frame, and then stand it up. That way we're going to be nice and square. We're going to have all our cuts done down at working level. It'll be a lot more safer and a lot easier on your shoulders and back. Alright, I'm going to flip these posts, and I'm going to show you the next cut we need to make to them. Okay, so we've got one more cut to make to each post. You can see we've got where the big long bearer is going to go across. That's all checked out, ready to go. But then we've got these rafters that come in at that 5-degree angle. Now, a couple of things to look out for here is that I've just got it sitting on a step stool at the moment, but it comes in. Now, if you remember on that board that we made, we did that rebate, right? So the end of that is going to slide into the end of that. So we need to allow for the amount that you've checked out here overhang into this space, because this goes in here, and that needs to accept into that. Now, you're making a left and right here, so don't go and make two lefts and then make two rights. You're going to be in trouble. So you can see there that I've got the rebate there, and I'm working with around 15mm. So what I want to do here is hang this in the same amount so it checks into there, and it'll give you this real nice, neat, tight joint. You are going to be cutting this one here on a 5-degree, so you'll do a couple of 5s, then you'll be able to straighten up, and you can just rip through the rest with the same principles, all the other checkouts that we've done with the circular saw. So I'm going to get cracking and make a left right on this, and then we are on to erecting stage, which is a bit of fun. So with any luck, you would have ended up with a join that looks like this, and you just notice I've marked this with an L. So I put H's on the house side of all the house side ones, and I'm going to put an L on this one, and then when I make the right one, I'm going to put R on it. That just makes sure that when I am putting it all together, I know what goes where. But you can see there that, you know, we're going to get a really nice flush joint, and when we put a bit of paint on the top of this, it'll all hide it up and it'll look $1 million. So I'm going to go and do the right hand side, and I'll meet you back. Okay, so we've got our holes dug to 600, and I've set a post in the hole now. All I've done with that post is I've got it nice and level with the spirit level, sat it in the ground, and I've used a bit of timber across, and I've just clamped it to the deck that I've got here. If you're just putting it in the ground, I recommend just getting a piece of timber. You can run them both ways if you want, clamp it up, even screw it in. Just hold your post in place while you settle and get things right. So I've got the post in. Now, I purposely bought these posts a little bit taller than I needed, so I could cut these down, and it would allow me to not muck around at the top with the saw doing those cuts that I said that I didn't want to do. So I'll be able to pull the post out of the hole when I'm done, and I'll be able to saw it off to the right level. What I've done is I've ran a nail just up in the top of our board that's attached to the house, and I've just ran that down to the side of my post that you'll see here, and I've got this pretty cool spirit level, which gives me a digital readout. I'll bring it a bit closer so you can see. It gives me a digital readout of degrees. All right, so it's pretty cool. So all I did with that is I ran it up to 5% down from my line, and bingo, I'm where I need to be. Now, if you don't have one of these, another way you can do it, there's plenty of calculators online. Just go to a slope calculator, put in how many meters away that your fall is. So in this case, it'd be 3 meters. And I think then it's times 1.746. You put that in over 3 meters and it'll tell you exactly how much it needs to fall, which in this case, I think is around the 20 odd centimeter mark. If you've got one of these, it just makes life so easy. So that's how you work out your slope and your fall. Now that I've got this in place where it needs to be, I'm measuring up from my nail up to the top of the post, and that's how much I need to cut off the bottom of the post. Then you just repeat for the other post, and then we're going to go on to the next step. So I'll get that bit done and I'll meet you back. Whew, it's getting hot. So we've cut the bases off our cypress pine posts, and now we're ready to start building the frame. And as I said, we're going to build it and then we're going to stand it up. And we're going to do the concrete last. And I know you've probably seen some other videos, a lot of them are concreting posts in first. I like to do it this way. It means I've got some wiggle room when I'm putting the frame in up the top. As long as you're supporting the base, it's not going to go anywhere. And you know, obviously don't want to do it on a too windy day. So I've got my posts in line with my backboard here, and a couple of things to shout out here. Firstly, the hardware that we're going to fix the two with. We're going to use M10 bolts, gal bolts in this case, and washers. Make sure you use the washers again. And we're going through and through this, so through the cypress pine post and through our bearer, all right? Don't go using coach bolts, don't use bugle bolts. They need to go right through. They need to be M10 at least, all right? So that's what we're going to do. You also want to make sure, we're actually going to countersink the heads of those as well. So I want it to be nice and flush. So I'm going to use my Forstner bit again. I'm going to countersink the heads down so they sit nice and flush. Get your trusty rafter square. If you haven't got one of these already, go grab one. And all we're going to do here is we're going to marry them up as so, clamp them. We're going to make sure that we've got our, we've got our square here in place and we're nice and square. And then we can go and drill our holes and fasten off our bolts. So let's do that, and then we're ready to stand up the frame. Okay, so we're really starting to take shape now. We're getting 3D. We've stood our frame up, and all I've done here is I've used clamps just to hold across my rafters in current position. Now there's a fair few things you need to do once you get to this stage. So remember, still no concrete and footing, so we can still move our posts around a little. But what you're looking to do here is you want to make sure that you start from one end and work your way across. And the first thing we're going to focus on is making sure that we're square with the house. And I'm doing this with a rafter square. I'm just using it on the plate that joined to the house, running down from the bearer and making sure that we're nice and square in that corner. From there, we want to make sure that our first post is level, both left and right, front and back. Check each side, make sure we're nice and level, and you get that bubble in the middle. All right, the next thing we want to do is make sure the overhead beam, so the one that the rafters are going to accept into, we've got that nice and level. And then from there, your last post and your bearer should be pretty well much near where they need to be based on the fact that you've got it all squared up on the first go. So that's where we're at.
So I'm going to fasten this off now. Now, what I'm going to use to fasten this is I'm actually going to use bugle screws in the back of the middle rafters, and on the end rafters, same principle we did with the bearer. We're going to run M10 bolts through the rafter into our post to hold that. At the house, we're going to use the strapping on the top, and we're also going to fasten that back with some screws and some nails. So let's go and fasten this together, and we'll come back and we'll talk about the next step. Let's go. So I'll show you these bugle screws going in. You can see here, and look at these joins. They're coming up really, really nice, right? Sitting in beautiful. Now, I got a couple of bugle screws in the back here. Now, the reason I'm pilot hole drilling these is because even though this is soft wood, these are notorious for splitting the end grain of the timber. So I always like to pilot hole, and you're nothing worse than you've done all this work and you go and split the end of your wood, and you know, it's just no good. So we'll I'll just show you what we do here. So just going in about so, pilot drill, and then we'll make a bugle in. And what you want to do with these is don't overdrive them. You just want them nice and flush with the wood, right? Nice and flush. Don't go driving them right in home. Now, you might see me struggling to get these beams in here in that time lapse. So what you'll need to do to get these in, they'll fit so snugly that I had to back off these two M10 bolts so I could loosen this board and bring it back a bit. Fasten the house side first, so we put the house side down into its groove first, and then sort of pull this back and drop the top in. So you'll have to do that for all your middle ones, or you'll have real hard time getting them in, because it was a very, very snug fit, and snug is what we want. So you can see here we've got the M10 bolts through. I'll show you on the other side here, and it's an absolute scorching hot day here. I've really had to watch what I'm doing in the middle of the day. It's just too hot. But you can see the type of joint. There's a little bit of a gap at the top, but I'll tuck him in with a screw and I'll bring it back home. So I'm pretty happy with that all in all, and it's taken really good shape. So just give you a bit of a look there now. We've closed that gap up really nice. I just popped the bugle up in the top as well. I might go and fill all these holes yet, so you don't see any bolts if I could be bothered. But if not, you know, it still looks pretty neat. You know, if we're looking at the front corner, got to hit it with a bit of paint yet, so you'll barely notice it. But we're taking some really good shape. I'll just show you a bit more at the house too. So we've got those nail straps. I'll put that up there. We've got them all nailed on. We're looking good here. I've tagged with the nail gun some nails in the top. I'm also going to run a screw through the bottom and up and in, just as an extra insurance policy. Probably don't even need to be honest. But you know, we've got to be sure that these things are going to stand the test of time. All right, but the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my measurements for my cross beams, purlins, whatever you want to call them, you know, battens. I'm going to run them across. So I'm going to take the measurement from one end to the other, and I'm going to make my cuts, and then I'm going to drop them all in, and hopefully they all line up and go in quite easily. Okay, so we're putting these roof battens in, and apologies to everyone. I've been calling them cross beams, I've been calling them top hats, purlins, you name it. They're really, let's settle on battens for now. Now, super happy with this. Like, have a look at this, right? It's just
gone in there beautifully. I've got some clamps. The clamps have come in super handy. But just with this one, right, so we want to make sure that we measure each one individually. So this one here went, so it should be 3 meters. It was actually 2 mil short, all right? Because probably the other thing that I needed to mention was that you should always take your corner measurement across to your far corner, and from this corner over here across to here. That'll make sure you're perfectly square. This being a couple of centimeters short tells me I'm probably just an absolute smidge out of perfect square, but we're not chasing absolute perfection here. That will be well and truly close enough. No one will ever pick that by eye. So just take your tape measure, run through the channels, take your measurement. We're just simply cutting to size on our miter saw, and we're putting them all through, and we're going to fasten these off with the framing nailer, and we should be good to concrete those post footings down there. So we've got all our battens in place. They went in beautifully, actually, really good, within a mil or two across the span, so really happy. And as you can see, we're going to have a nice surface to put our tin onto. So what I need to do now is just get these last few in primer, then I'm going to paint them. We're going black. I'm going to leave the posts the cypress, which I think will look pretty cool. And then we've got I've ordered the black tin, but it's not in yet, so I'm going to have to wait until that gets here. The other thing I need to do is concrete in these posts. Now, concrete, normally I would mix my own. I'd start from scratch and I'd do four shovels of screedings and 1 shovel of cement. But for a job this small, like, you know, two holes, I've actually bought some of the stuff in bags. Now, save the rapid set for the letterbox. We need high strength concrete. All right, this is MPA 40. You'll see it on the bag and it'll say structural rated. For anything like this, we need to make sure we're using the right product. So that would be my recommendation. So I'm still going to use my concrete mixer for this. I'm going to mix it up. You could just mix it in a barra, but I've got a mixer there, so I'll just mix it up. Straight in the holes, let it sit overnight, we'll paint it, and then we'll be ready to go for the tin. So really happy how it's come along so far, but it is time for a beer.
Okay, so we're all painted up and we've got our tin that's arrived, so we can get cracking with the roof. But just before I do that, I just want to show you, I'll put some bracing just in the corners of where the posts are. Now the ones that are at the far end here, that's a 90-degree angle, so they're just simple. They're the 90 by 45, same as we use for the battens. Just cut at 45-degree angles. The length didn't matter too much. I didn't want to make them too big and stand out too much, so you'd whack your head on them. But they just cut at 45 degrees, nice and easy. The other angle, where it slopes back to the house, has got an extra 5%, so that's a 95-degree angle. So all I've done there is set my miter saw to 47 degrees, and there you go. You make the 2 cuts at 47 and it sits in nice, paint them and you're good to go. So that's the frame, totally built. Now I'm going to show you what we do with the roof. So come up, we'll jump up the ladder and I'll show you what we're doing here to fix these roof sheets to the roof.
So we're up on the roof. For the steel, all I did is, there's a place local in town here that I ordered it through, and you can order this stuff measured, ready to go. So I've got 3 meters worth to cover here, as you'd know, and I need 4 sheets to do that. 4 sheets covers just over 3 meters, so we're going to be fine for its coverage that way. With the length, I'm not actually going to put a gutter on this one. If you're going to put a gutter, you might want a little bit more overhang. In hindsight, I probably would have gone a little bit further, maybe another couple of, another 20 mil or something like that. But the sheet's pushed up hard underneath the house there, so we're sitting under the gutter. So you're not going to need any leaks in here, because obviously the water landing on the roof of the house is going to go into the gutter, and any water landing on this roof is going to run off. And I've got quite a depression here, so I'm actually not going to run a gutter off the back of that. I also got some custom flashing made up for the ends. I got that done in 70 by 70. Probably hindsight on that, I'd do 90 by 90 as well. But you can see there that I did get text through that into the roof, which is what I wanted to do. Now I want to talk about the pattern that we're going to use for our screws in the roof. So the pattern I'm using to fix this is that in the end piece, so either end, this end and that end, the principle you want to use is hit one, miss one, hit one, miss one. So if you see here, all right, we've gone hit one, miss one, hit one, miss one, hit one, miss one, so on and so forth. So do that top and bottom, hit one, miss one. For the middles, what you want to do is hit one, miss two, hit one, miss three. If you keep that little rhyme in your head, you're going to be perfect when you go through the middle ones. The middle ones don't require as much because the wind is going to rip up underneath the end of the sheet, either end, and potentially cause it to lift. That's why we're fastening more in there, and in the middle you just don't need as many techs. You're more or less just stopping it from banging on the framework. So hit one, miss two, hit one, miss three, hit one, miss two, hit one, miss three, so on and so forth. And what that'll do is ensure that when I slide another sheet up under here, that a tech's going to go right perfect in the last one and fasten to the sheet. And when we're connecting the sheets, we're going to go under 1.5 ribs. So essentially the sheet that I put under will come to here. All right, so that's the principle. It's 4 sheets, super easy, flashing's easy, just goes on the edge, bang the screws through it and you're on. I'm going to put this up, let's go into a bit of a build laps and I'll meet you back. So I just want to give you a bit of a closer look at how we're fixing these roof sheets. So what I'm using here is these roofing tech screws. They've got basically a cutting edge on the face. It'll rip straight through the tin, so no need to pre-drill. And underneath, you'll see that it's got this rubber weather seal, and that's to stop any water getting between your screw, through your roof, and then out into your roof cavity, which is what you don't want. All right, very important when you put these in is that they go into the top of a ridge, and we'll talk about how deep to put these in or how not deep to put them in. The reason you want to go into a ridge is if you go into a valley, you're going to have this screw head here sitting, and the minute water comes in, it's going to sit around your screw head. That's going to give you the potential to leak, right? Once on the top of the valley, the water's running off, won't leak under your screw head. So we always want to make sure we're doing that. The other thing I like to do, and now if you're up a ladder all day roofing, you're probably going to do it by eye, but I'm not. So what I like to do is use a straight edge, all right? And I run it down my line of text there, okay? And then I come down to here and I make sure that I'm in the middle of my framework. And what that's going to do is ensure that I get a really straight row of techs. And if I put the camera over to here, you'll see that the techs are nice and straight, all right? So that's what we want. Then what I'm going to do, because I'm in the middle of a sheet, we're going to use our principle, our hit one, skip two, hit one, skip three type method. You'll see there that where the roof sheets join here, I've got a mark, all right? So that's perfect, all right? Now what I want to do is take my 2, so 1, 2, and I'm going to hit one. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 on the 4th one, and then 1, 2, 3 lands me on my 4th one. Beautiful. All right, so just the last thing here. How deep do I put these techs in? Now what you want to do, all right, so these use a 5/16 bit or an 8mm I think we've got here. What you want to do here is you want to drive the tech in, so it sits nice and flush like that. Now that's just put the tiniest bit of, probably hard to see, tiniest bit of pressure on our rubber seal. All right, what we don't want to do, you know, is go into these depths, because that's not going to do anything. It's not going to hold the roof properly, and you're not going to get the seal. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to overdrive as well. So you'll see the overdrive because it'll start to pull in the nice bends in our corrugated sheet. So see how I've overdriven that? It's wrecked the seal, and you can see the roof profile now is all kinked. You don't want to do that. So you just want to make sure that you back these off nice and they're sitting nice and flush, and you'll see all the way along we're not pulling the roof in. All right, so that's what you want to do. All right, let's get on with it.
Well, there you have it, one lean-to patio complete, and probably just the last thing to do is just tally up the costs and how long it took. So our timber roof, it was $350. This is Australian dollars, by the way. Our posts, our cypress pine posts were 110. The paint was 50 bucks. It did actually cost me 100, but I've only used half of it. I'm going to use the rest in the house. I'm only going to claim 50 on that. The fasteners, the bolts, the Tex, that was $100. The strapping that we've used to strap the rafters to the wall with, that was 20 bucks. Our concrete cost $80. That was that bag stuff. You could probably do it a little cheaper if you did mix it up from scratch yourself. The steel for the roof, so 4 roof sheets and 2 flashings was $300, giving us a grand total of $1,010. So right on budget there, pretty happy with that. Look, from a time point of view, it did actually take me 4 days. We've had some stinking hot weather here, so I didn't do much through the middle of the day, and I had to wait for the steel. So I think if you had everything ready to go and you had some cooler days, you could probably knock it off in 2 to 3 days max. So we're going to claim that as well. And I think you'll agree, you know, after a work hard done, you know, you really get that sense of achievement doing something like this. And I really hope that you guys at home get something from this and you can pull it off yourself. I've got a big deck project coming up out here to do as well. So everything that you see here will get pulled apart. I'm going to run with a nice big hardwood deck. So, you know, really looking forward to bringing you that video as well. If you want to catch these videos, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. And as always, I'd love some likes and, you know, any comments that you might have. If you want to ask a few questions, it was a pretty big video, this one. Feel free to drop them in the bottom of the comment section and I'll give you a hand there with any questions you may have. But you've been home on the tools with James. Thanks heaps for watching. I'll see you in the next video.